All right, so over the years I've seen some questions from folks that come up and they're asking about why their bike won't start, and it's got something to do with the oil level sensor or the oil light coming on. So it kind of confused me because the way these things are wired, the oil sensor doesn't have anything to do with it starting or running or anything like that. But if I take out the starter relay, I can kind of show you what folks are seeing. So let me turn it on. And so what we got is, if I hit the button, what I get is just the oil light. So I think what's happening is folks are thinking that because it won't start and all you get is that oil light right there, the oil level sensor light, it's got something to do with that sensor. But actually it doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with it. So what I'm going to do is set up here and show that it doesn't have anything to do with it, because I got a motor over here that is bone empty. It's an old broke motor, but it's got the sensor on it. So I'm going to hook it up to this bike and just show that the bike will start even with the oil light on, or the sensor showing that there's no oil in the motor at all. So let's get set up and do that. But then, while I got the bike apart, I figured we'd show some of the reasons why the bike won't start and why you get that little oil light, but it actually doesn't start. We'll also look at what defeats the TCI on these first gens, because this is a first gen Virago. And we'll show that as well in case you're having trouble getting spark. It'll crank, but it won't spark. So let's get set up and we will fire this thing up, showing that it has nothing to do with the oil light. And then we'll go through some of this circuitry, because I laid out over here on the board, if you can see, I laid out all the relays and some conditions that have to be made. So we'll go through that as well. Alright, so just to confirm, so folks can see that the oil sensor has nothing to do with the bike starting or not starting. It's just the light lights up to let you know the bulb is good, basically what it's doing. So what we're going to do is disconnect our oil sensor, and we're going to connect it up over here to this old motor. And so what I fired up, you'll see that it'll fire up even with no oil at all in the bike. Now if the oil light came on, you might be able to see in the camera, but with it all hooked up, see the bike will still fire up. It'll fire up even with no oil at all. It's just not even good. It doesn't have anything to do with that little oil turn back on. So that kind of busts that myth. But it doesn't answer why the bikes won't start sometimes when you see that you have an issue. Now, in a video I did just a little bit ago, I showed where I didn't have 12 volts on the wire going down to the solenoid, and I had a wiring issue up in the top. So that would be one reason why they won't start. It has nothing to do with the oil. So let's just bust that myth right now. But let me go through some of these relays and let's see what might cause the bike to show that it's got the oil light and it not want to start. Alright, so when it comes to a bike not starting, when you turn the key on, you hit the button, you don't get anything. There's several things that can be wrong. The first most important thing, like we showed in the other video, is that anywhere, let's see if I can set that so you can see it, anywhere that you have, and I'm just going to hook up a ground, the red and white wires coming down here to all these relays and diodes and all this kind of stuff, anywhere you got a red and white wire, in order for the thing to start, when you turn the key on, you need to get voltage. Now, there's some things that can go wrong with these relays, but the first thing, most important thing, is that you got to have, anywhere that you probe it, in order for it to start, you're going to have battery voltage, or 12 volts, on those red and white wires, because every one of them has got to be showing some voltage. So if we rule that out all the way down to the solenoid down there, you got voltage on it, then we need to look at the ground side of everything. So that's where all these relays come in, that's where all these contacts come in. So let's go one by one down through these and we can see. And so just to make things simple, I got two little LEDs showing here. Now these are battery tenders from Harbor Freight, and they're crap for battery tending, but they're great for showing if 12 volt signals are coming in. So you can see, if I turn the key off, this one is the starter enable. So that's going to put power down to the solenoid. This one is the TCI enable, because some of these switches, they'll allow you to start, but they won't allow you to fire, or some of them will allow the TCI to come in, so it would start if you could start it, but it won't start because of one of the relays. So let's get set up here and go through these relays one by one, and we're going to see what they do. All right, so just looking at the relays ahead of time here before we get over to the board. For the first gen 750 and the 920 chain drive, I believe, what their system consists of is 4 relays. So you have a headlight relay, that's the yellow, and so it'll have a yellow on the relay and then it's a yellow on the connector or a yellow piece of tape or something. Well, that's the headlight one, so that's easy, we'll do it first. Then you have a couple of blue ones, and so the blue one here, this is the start relay. We'll talk about it because if you don't have a tack on the bike anymore, this relay is doing absolutely nothing because it's a normally closed relay, and without the tack, all that one's doing is once it sees a signal from the tack, it disables the start button so you can't grind your gears. But I left it on there because it's not hurting anything. It's a good place to have a backup relay because it's the same as the Sidestand relay. That's a normally closed relay, and it's blue as well. So those two are blue, and we'll look at the numbers, the identifying numbers on them here in just a minute. This one that's on the white connector is the cutout. That's the start cutout relay. Now that's the one that if this relay is not made, you're not going to get any power down to the solenoid, which means you're not going to start the bike, even if everything else is working good. This is the guy that cuts everything out. Well, then we also have a diode. So this diode does some math. And if you look in the book and you look at these things, you say, oh, it's a relay. I know what a relay does. Oh, it's a diode. I know what diodes do. But it's totally wrong on this bike because, yes, these are relays. Every one of them's a relay. But inside of these relays, they also have diodes that are directing the current back and forth. So you can't probe them like a regular relay. I'll show you that here in just a minute, but same thing goes for this diode right here. This thing is called a diode in the book, but it's actually more like a logic circuit. It's a bunch of diodes and relays and I don't know, stuff inside of there that does some logic to make this bike start and make it run and make all the switches work and things. So just know that this is not just a diode. This is like a little logic circuit, but we'll show what it does here in just a little bit. This is a good one. I got a bad one as well, and we'll put it on there. So just know when you're working through all these circuits, you can't test this stuff like just regular old relays and a diode or something like that and think you can do it. It doesn't work that way. So that's the biggest thing, and it's like that for most of the bikes. This whole wiring is different for each of the bike models, you know, like the 750, the 920 with the digital display is different. But once you see how this stuff works, you'll be able to trace it down in the book, and you'll be able to say, oh, that could be my problem. So now let's go over to the board, and we're going to start with this guy right here. This is the headlight relay. He's pretty easy. So I got a good one in there, and I'll also show what happens if you have a bad diode, what happens to this relay. So let's go over to the board real quick, and then I'll come back over here, and we'll play with the wires. All right, so over to the board we go, and what I've done is I've written down the things about the 4 relays. So we'll start at the top. The headlight relay is a real easy one. I got the wires that go to it, and then also what you can do if you have a bad diode, how to get your headlight working, but it also shows how it normally works. So the yellow relay, and just before I go through these, one thing to note is that if somebody's put like the yellow relay down here on a start circuit, or they've used one of those normally open ones or normally closed ones up on the yellow, you may have burnt out your diode, because here's an example of a bad diode, and this was one that one of these other relays got switched up here to the headlight. Well, it burned out the wire down here that goes to the little component inside of this guy, and now my headlight switch won't work, because normally the headlight is supposed to be off when it's cranking, and then as soon as it finishes cranking, the headlight comes on. Well, if your bike doesn't do that anymore, most likely this little guy right here is bad, and you've had to swap to another relay. Like you could put the 12R relay, you can put it in place of the actual relay, and then the headlight's going to work, but it stays on all the time. So let's go through the relays and see. So the yellow relay, which is this one, that yellow relay is a 3H500 originally. And so that one needs to be in there because it's got a little diode right here that crosses over between the red and the black. And what it does is, as soon as the rectifier or the charging side of it gives voltage to this relay, it'll latch and then it turns the light on, but it won't do it until it's finished doing its cranking or it sees voltage. So this one's pretty easy, and we'll show it in just a minute, but it gets 12 volts from the red and yellow, not to be confused with the red and white. It's a totally separate circuit. Red and white is what's driving your ignition. Red and yellow is the power to this relay. So after the relay engages, it switches power over to the blue and black, which goes up to the switch that's on the handlebars up here. And then you can do bright or dim, whatever you wanted to do on your headlight. So this one's pretty easy, and we'll show it just in a second. But one thing to note, like I say, the bike over here, I got a good diode in it. This is a bad diode, so I'll hook the bad diode up with the good relay, and I'll show that you won't get a headlight. Then I'll hook the bad diode up with a swapped out relay, an R12, and you'll see that I'll get a headlight all the time. So our options there would be, if that relay's gone bad, you can always just jump the red and yellow to the blue-black, then your headlight's going to stay on all the time. You can just get rid of that relay, because if the diode is burnt out, it's not going to work anyway. So let's go back over to the bike and look at that relay, and then we'll come back over to the board and look at the next one. Alright, so looking at the headlight relay, and it is the yellow one. Yellow relay, it's got yellow tape on this, and then there should be yellow somewhere on that relay, or you can look it up by its number if it's still visible. It's the 3H500. So the way it's supposed to work, and I got it so you can see the headlight, is when I turn the switch on, I don't get any headlight, so I don't waste energy on the starting circuit. So with a good relay and a good diode, when I hit the button to fire it up, you can see that the headlight comes on. Alright. So this thing's still a little grumpy because I haven't changed its jetting back to the way it should be. But we're okay, we can fire it up a few times. So what happens if I have a good relay, but my diode is bad? So let me swap this thing out right here. This is a good one, and so I'm going to swap to my bad one. This one got burnt up because somebody put the wrong relay in there, in the headlight module. And so if I hook this guy up, now what's going to happen is I have a bad diode that's controlling the headlight relay. So when I turn it on, I don't get any headlight. Well, that's true. But when I fire it up, I still don't get any headlight. So that is showing me that something's wrong with this diode right here, because I didn't get a headlight. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to buy another new diode? Well, probably not, because you can't find these things anymore. So here's what you got to do to get your headlight working is, number one, you could either take that red and white, or red and yellow, sorry, and hook it to the blue-black, and then your headlight's going to work. Or you can just get, and I'll leave that connected, and this is a good one, you can just get a relay, and this is the relay for the starter cutout. So it's a different relay, and this is the one that fried the diode. But since the diode's fried anyway, I can just put that guy in there, and as soon as I put the wrong relay in there, my headlight comes on, and regardless of if it's starting or not, the headlight comes on. So it's going to stay on the whole time, and when I hit start, it's still going to stay on. So if your diode is bad on that little wire that goes down to the headlight circuit, then you could either get a new diode or just swap that thing out to one of the starter cutout relays, and it's going to work. So we're okay there. I'm just going to leave it like it is, because I don't care if the headlight comes on or not, and we'll just go on. So next up, we're going to talk about the start relay. This is a normally closed relay, and we'll show it in just a minute over on the board. It is the 4U800. So let's go back over to the board and see what's up with the start relay. Alright, so on to the next easy relay. It's the start relay. So it is a blue relay, and you can see on the tab, they got it blue. And the number for it is a 4U800. So it's a blue relay, and it is a normally closed relay, which means when there's no power, the contacts are closed. So without power to the bike, this relay is ready to go. It shouldn't be a problem as long as the contacts are good inside of the relay. So if you have this relay in there and you have a tack, what this thing does is when the bike gets a signal from the tack that it's running, it disables the start button. So only thing this relay is doing is it's a start button disable relay. So when the bike's not running, this relay is closed and it'll start. If the bike is running and you have a tack, then it opens this relay and it won't allow the start button to energize the starter anymore. So it's kind of a safety feature, keeps you from grinding your gears. But it doesn't do a whole lot. That's all it does in its life. So what we can do is go over to the bike and we can see, because if you don't have a tack like on this bike, I don't need this relay at all, but I leave it in there because it's the same relay as the side stand relay. So in case my side stand relay goes out, I can just swap it over and go on about my life. So let's go over to the bike and see about this relay. And like I say, if you don't have a tack or you don't care because who's going to hit the start button after it's started anyway, you can take this relay out of the whole circuit and we'll show how to do that. So let's go over here and look at the start relay on the bike. All right, so here is the start relay on the bike. And as you can see, it's the one that's got a red and white coming in, a red and white going out. Now when you probe this with the key on, this relay is not supposed to tick. It's the one that if the tack comes on and tells it the bike's running, it'll open this relay. So if this relay is in there and everything is good, then the bike would start, right? So I could get a start. But if I remove this relay, it opens the circuit because it's a normally closed relay. So if this relay is a dud, if the contacts have gone bad inside, without the relay, the bike won't start. And guess what? You get the little oil light up here that everybody wonders why that oil light's doing. So if all you're getting is an oil light and you have 12 volts all over the place to your red and white wire, you might look at this relay and see, because it may be a dud. And so you can see without the relay, it won't start. When I hit the start button, I don't get anything up there. Let me zoom out so you can see. So when I hit the button without the relay, I don't get anything. Boop, 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 boop. If I put the relay in because it's normally closed, like that, then I can start the bike. So what do you do if you want to check this relay to see if he's gone bad, or if it's clicking when you turn the key on, there's something wrong in the circuitry. So what we can do if we wanted to disable it is we can take it away, and then all I can do is get a jumper, and what I'm going to do is jump the red and the whites. So let's just put the little jumper in there like that right there. Well, that's the same as this relay. If I don't have a tack, I don't care. And now with the wire jumper, you can hear it, it'll turn it over. So our options are you could just jump it and see if you get it to start, or if you're tired of the whole thing, you can just cut the red and whites and just clip them together, and then you don't have to worry about this relay. But like I say, I use it because it's the same as the side stand relay, and if it ever goes bad, I can just swap the two out on the bike and I can continue on my way. So there we go with the two easy relays. But next we're going to get into these two difficult relays where they're doing some things, and that's why I got these little things lit up here. One is showing me when this one's enabled, the other one is showing me when that one's enabled. So if I turn my key off, those two lights cut off, and it's going to show me when these two relays come on and off based on conditions. So let's get set up, go back over to the board, and then we're going to look at these conditions that makes your TCI enabled, which allows it to spark, or your starter enabled, which allows it to start. All right, so on to our next relay, which is the starter cutout relay. Now it's a normally open relay, and it does have a diode in it that does some calculation inside of that relay, as well as it uses the diode itself, the thing they call the diode in the schematics that's really like a logic circuit. It uses that too. So this one's really important, and you gotta have it, and you gotta have things right. So it hooks up on the wire, and you can see over here it uses the clutch switch and it uses the neutral plus some logic in the diode in order to take the red 12 volt and flip it down to the red and white to go to the start relay, which we already talked about the start relay. He's not necessary unless you got a tach and you want to disable the ability to start the button so it doesn't grind. So for the start cutout relay, what I did is put some conditions, and so we'll see these on the bike in a minute, but I'll read through them. But with the side stand up and in neutral, you get power to the start relay and you get your TCI enabled. So that's normal, how I normally start my bike anyway, but that'll make the bike start up. If the side stand is up and it's not in neutral and the clutch is pulled, then you'll get power to the start relay and it'll enable your TCI. So it's working these two wires right here with a little logic to say if you're not in neutral but your clutch is pulled with the stand up, it's still going to start the bike and it's still going to enable the TCI. Now if your side stand is down and you're in neutral, then you also get power to the relay and the TCI is enabled. That's part of the logic too. So you can start the bike in neutral with the side stand down. But if the side stand is down and you're not in neutral, you don't get any power to the start relay, which won't give any power to the solenoid, so you can't start the bike. And it also disables the TCI. So this is one of the few conditions that it'll disable the TCI as well if your side stand is down and you're not in neutral. So if you got a problem with your neutral switch and it's not registering with the side stand down, it's not going to fire the bike. It won't even crank it. Even if you put a screwdriver across it, your coils are disabled because your TCI is disabled. So now let's head over to the bike and have a look at this one and we can see some of these conditions. All right, so I got the camera backed up a little bit so we can see all of the switches and things as I do them. So we're going to go down through those starter cutout conditions because there's a starter cutout. And so what I got here is two lights. So this one will light up when the starter is enabled, which means it'll start the bike. This one's for the TCI, and it's going to light up when it says it could actually spark and start the bike. So if this one lights up, it'll crank. If this one lights up, it'll start. So those together are needed to get this bike to start. So the first condition is the side stand up. So we got a side stand up, and then we power it up, and we're showing we're in neutral, so we can see that. So if we have those two, then the TCI is enabled and the starter is enabled. So if I started it, you can see it'll start. So we're good there. That's normally how you start the bike. So let's go to the next condition, and I'll just turn it back off. So if we have for the next condition, the side stand is up, and then we're not in neutral. So let's say we're not in neutral, and what it does is disengages the starter. So now it's not going to start right here with the button because this is not lit up. It's disabled the start relay, which disables the solenoid. Now we know we can bypass the start relay just by jumping it. If you don't have a tach, it's no big deal. But it's not going to start in that condition right there. But if we pull the clutch, because we're not in neutral, the side stand is up, and right now my clutch is zip tied off to show that it's not pulled. And so if I pull the clutch, what it does is open that. And so you can see, if I take the zip tie off, as soon as I pull the clutch, so right now with the button in, that means the clutch is not pulled. If I pull the clutch, it enables the start. And so then I can start it and it would start up. So we got those conditions for this starter cutout. So you got to check and make sure that if you're not getting a click, and you can feel that starter cutout click when you're doing it, but you can see it clicks every time. If you're not getting that, you might want to check your clutch switch and make sure that that clutch switch is reading if you're not in neutral. Now if you're in neutral, it doesn't matter. The clutch switch doesn't do anything. It's going to start when it's in neutral. All right, so on to the next condition. So now, for the next one, we want the side stand down, and we want to be in neutral, And you can see with the side stand down and in neutral, it still says it's going to start, because neutral is kind of the key. It's the one that's enabling this TCI, is the side stand switch. So we got that one. We know it'll start because the lights are lit up. So then the final one, we can turn it back off. We'll see it's the side stand down, not in neutral, no power to the start relay. So if we're side stand down and we're not in neutral, then what you get is both of them cut off. So the side stand up, it'll fire. The side stand down, not only will it not start, you won't get anything on your starter, it also disabled your TCI. So you have to be in neutral with the side stand down in order for the bike to fire up. Alright, so there's our 4 conditions for the starter cutout, and we can see that making those conditions lights up these lights, and you're going to be able to start the bike. Alright, so on to our last relay, which is the side stand relay. So let's have a look at the board at the side stand relay, and then I'm going to show you something that you can do if you're not getting your conditions met. You can enable that TCI, so at least you can stick a screwdriver across it. If something's not working over here, at least you're going to get your coils to fire. So let's get set up over here at the board and look at the last relay. Alright, so on to our last relay, and it is the side stand relay down here. So it's a blue relay, just like the start relay. So those two are blue. They got blue tape on the harness, or they got a blue connector, so you'll know. And the relay's got blue on it as well. So just remember, like I said before, if somebody swapped these relays around accidentally, because they will all fit within each other, it may have fried your diode, or it may have burned up the diode inside the relay, or it may have ruined the relay. So you might have problems with the relays if these things weren't in the right position. Then you're going to have to figure out, is it a problem with the diode, or is it a problem with that relay itself? But for the side stand relay, it's a normally closed blue relay. So normally closed means that when there's no power, the TCI is automatically disabled. So when you turn the key off, not only does it kill the 12 volt power, it kills the TCI. And that's how it's controlling when you put the side stand down. It doesn't kill the 12 volts, so all your lights stay on, everything still works. It kills the TCI, and it does that by using the black and white wire on the first gens. Now, most of them, all the way up to second gen, they use this relay. So we'll show in a minute how to get fire on the bike if this relay is bad, or if you got a circuit problem. You can take that relay out, and it's the only thing that prevents the TCI from making the spark. So if you're not getting spark and you're cranking, or you can put a screwdriver across it and you're still not getting spark, I'll show you. You can just take that relay out, and that will enable the TCI to fire. There's no other reason. If it won't fire without that relay, then there's something wrong with the TCI, something wrong with the coils, something wrong with, a ground or the 12 volt going to them. So let's look at the conditions for this side stand relay. And as you can see, the black and white is the TCI disabled, black is the ground. So when those two are contacted, because it's normally closed, your TCI won't fire. But if you have 12 volts to it, and the blue yellow, that's the side stand switch plus the diode. So we're going to look at that as well. You got to have the diode and the side stand switch to work to get this one to work properly. But if your side stand is up, your TCI is enabled. So it doesn't do anything as long as the side stand's up. If the side stand is down and you're in neutral, you get the TCI enabled. If the side stand is down and you're not in neutral, it disables the TCI. If your side stand is down and you're in neutral and you have a bad diode and the clutch is not pulled, it's going to disable your TCI. So I'll show that by taking the diode away, and you'll see that it does something strange without that diode. It's going to disable your TCI. And if the side stands down and you're in neutral and you still have a bad diode, but you pull your clutch in, it's still going to enable the TCI. So you can see that it has something to do with the diode giving it signal, because it can enable and disable the TCI if the diode is missing or if the diode is bad. And by diode, I mean that little logic circuit thing that they call a diode in there. So let's go over to the bike And we'll show those, each of those conditions, and you'll see what's going to enable and disable the TCI. But just keep in mind, it's the only relay out of all the relays that can do anything to the TCI. The rest of them are start stuff or headlights or something like that. So let's go over here and see how those conditions, when they're met, what it does to the TCI. All right, so back over to the bike again, and we're going to watch our lights. And you can see in neutral with the side stand down, just like a minute ago, the TCI is enabled. But with the side stand down and you not in neutral, it disables the TCI and it disables the start. So you can't start and you're not gonna fire. All right, so on to the next one. Side stand down. If we're in neutral, so we pull it back up in neutral, and we have a bad diode, but the clutch isn't pulled. And so here I'm going to simulate you got a bad diode. Now this is a good diode, but if I disconnect it, and like I say, my clutch up here is closed with a zip tie, so it's saying that the clutch is not pulled right now. If I disconnect the diode, I lose the signal to the TCI, because the TCI needs the diode to run the circuitry to turn that switch to make the relay go to enable it. So if you have a bad diode, then you're not going to enable your TCI. But that's only if the clutch is not pulled in. Now if I take my zip tie away to simulate that the clutch is pulled in, I actually don't need the diode. So we can see that with the clutch pulled in, like you simulated it pulled in, and it's in neutral, even with the side stand down and a bad diode, you're still going to enable it. Now if I hook the diode back in, see, it still works fine. So that's a little odd condition that this stuff does with this diode right here, that if your side stand is down and you're in neutral and you have a bad diode and you don't pull the clutch, then you're going to disable, like I pull the diode out, you're going to disable the TCI and you're not going to fire. So you got to check and make sure that the diode is good, or you can just pull the clutch and it should enable it. And so now we can see, and it's really easy with the lights right here, but you can also feel them. When you pick them up, you can feel them and see when they're clicking or not, and you'll know which one is which. So now, let me show something real quick with the side stand relay to show that I can enable or disable the TCI. So if you were trying to figure out why you weren't getting spark, even if you can't get the starter to work, you can still crank the bike over by laying a screwdriver across the coil. Alright, so just for a check, and like I say, there are some conditions that maybe the TCI, like the bike will start but you don't get any fire. Well, what you can do to get around that for all the bikes except for maybe the second gens where they don't have a relay to the side stand, it's actually tied directly into the diode. So if I show, for example, I'm at a condition where I got the bad diode and I got my clutch switch showing that the clutch is not engaged, well, the TCI is not functioning, so it'll crank, but it won't start. So all I got to do to get this bike to see if it's going to crank is to take out the side stand relay. Now it doesn't enable it on here on my little thing, but when I take it out, it opens that circuit. So without the side stand relay, the bike still starts. It'll cut it off because it's disabled it in the circuitry, but I can trick it by just pulling the side stand relay out, and the bike's going to start because it opens the circuit to the TCI without the relay, because this blue relay is normally closed. Well, alright, we got one more thing that I was going to show, because I got a few of these diodes laying around and you can see that this is a bad one. Well, what I'm going to do, this is the wrong relay. This is the relay that makes the light turn on all the time, right? Because the diode's bad, I need to have the wrong relay in here. But let's just say somebody accidentally switched up and they got the wrong relay on the headlight. Well, I'll show you what it does to my good diode right here, because I got a few of these laying around anyway. This old janky one. I'm going to show you what happens and what fries this relay right here. It's because somebody puts the wrong relay, or sorry, fries this diode right here. It's because somebody puts the wrong relay in the headlight, and it cooks this little guy. So just for giggles, let me set up and I'll show you some smoke coming out of one of these diodes, and you're going to see these guys will get burned up, and that's why the headlights don't work like they're supposed to work. Alright, so just for giggles, to show you what'll cook one of these little circuits right here, what I got, so right now we're good. I got the good headlight relay in there, that's the correct one, and this is what's gonna fry this thing, is if somebody put the wrong relay in there and then started it up. So right now, if we start the bike up, we got the good diode and we got the correct relay. This is the headlight relay. So when I fire the bike up, right now I don't have any headlight on the wall. When I fire it up, you can see up on the wall that the headlight is working. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to have my good diode, but I'm going to accidentally take the wrong relay, and this is the starter cutout relay. Well, it fits. It's not yellow, but it fits. And so let's put that guy in there, and what we're going to do is fire the bike up, and you're going to see what happens to this diode right here if you put the wrong relay in there, and then you're going to know why the diodes go bad. So if I turn the bike on, my headlight came on. You can see my relay is open. And so what happens is if somebody puts the wrong headlight relay in there, you will flat fry one of these diodes right here. So you can see it cooked that gum diode. So I got plenty of them, I don't really care. But it got it so hot that it actually melted everything. Now, it's probably ruined, but we'll stick them back together and I'll switch back over to my correct headlight. And this guy got hot too, because it's not wanting to have that diode running that way. So let's switch back over to our good one. And let's just see, we'll put it back on the wall and see if I fried that diode or if maybe it survived and just started smoking a little bit. So let's get back up here so we can see if our headlight still works. So now I got the correct headlight relay in there. This was a good diode. We don't know if it's good anymore. This was the starter cutout relay. And so that's what went wrong and fried my diode. So now we'll try it and see when I fire it up, if my headlight comes on, then I didn't cook it. All I did was just got it kind of hot. So you can see the portal diode, although he got smoke, it's still working because my headlight was off, and it still cuts off, and then when I turn it back on, my headlight doesn't come on until I hit the start button. So there we go. But if you wonder what happens to your little diode, just know you probably got the wrong relay in your headlamp and it's going to fry that little guy. Well, alright, maybe all of this was simple enough that it helped someone figure out how to get one of these things to start. And if you go through all of that and you don't have any issues, everything worked like it should work, then the last thing on the list that would keep one from starting is going to be the starter solenoid itself. So you would want to replace that guy, put a new solenoid on it, and see if the thing will fire up. Well, alright, I hope all that helped someone, and thanks for watching.